Hi, Carmen. I'm well, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm good. We did our bonding time yesterday. I wanted to talk to you on live yesterday, but you wasn't feeling it, so we just bonded. But today, I gave you, I guess, what, a minute to get yourself situated, and we jump right on.
Yeah.
I wanted to just have a different kind of conversation where we were just talking like we were yesterday. And
Okay.
we're both special needs moms and we have these awesome kids. But I guess my first question to you would be, have you ever thought, and you probably have, but have you ever thought about what it would be like to have your baby and not have any support system at all? Like none.
Um, I mean, if the question is coming across as a yes or no question, yeah, I have. And like I live in an I live in an area where seems like um a lot of people have family nearby, you know, li- like a neighbor of mine who moved here from out of state. She was telling me she has children with some challenges, and she was telling me that something happened where she needed childcare and she wasn't able to find anybody, and one of her coworkers said, well, why don't you just ask your mom to come to watch your children, right? You know, assuming that her own situation was, everybody else's situation, that people have their mothers nearby to watch their kids, that people have, family nearby where you have a support network to call on. That's not how it is for everybody. I mean, you know, my situation, I'm not as resourceless as a lot of people are, but I'm not, but still, by the same token, I'm not as resourceful as other people are, you know? And I feel very blessed for the resources that I do have. But I know there are people out there. I mean, it's really hard being a special needs mom, there's a lot that falls on the shoulders of the moms. No offense to dads. I'm sure there are dads who are working just as hard at this, but the majority of the time it's the moms. And it's really just, without having any other stressors or challenges, it's really, really, really hard. I mean, I love my child, but it's hard. And to have those additional challenges of not having resources, not having family, not having the money you need to pay for the therapies for your child, I mean, all of that makes it even harder.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about like some of our families, you know, we can't even get into talking about the racial equity issues because they're vast. It is horrible
Yeah.
um, how they deny services to children
Yep.
with special needs, how they avoid giving children with special needs services, how they can say that they don't know what to do and put in all of these ways to extend time for them to learn something that they should learn, but the law protects them, saying that until they learn it, they don't have to do these things. But I'm just
Okay.
thinking about like this friend that she's Caucasian, you know, but her son is special needs, and she's a single mom. And even over this last year, I think I've been knowing you about a year now, just watching her struggle. I mean,
Yeah.
struggle, trying to advocate for her son, trying to keep a roof over her head, trying to find a living wage, create a living wage while trying to remember to breathe.
Right.
Like I'm thinking about her today and I'm even emotional because it's because the color of her skin is Caucasian. She has not been able to get any help. And I mean any help in the midst of this great shaking. And I think it's because people do not understand what children with special needs go through, nor their families. I think we're not even just siloed in this education thing. I think we're siloed everywhere. Like I just paid $4,000 to get in the state plan, something you know I need to have for my son
Right.
because of the community I live in, because of my financial circumstances. 4,000. Make it make sense, Jen. Like
Right.
where am I?
No, there is so much to this. And, you know, speaking to one of the things, speaking to how you started what you just said, right? That the the racial equity piece is just a small part of it, a small part of this. You were saying that there are people who are in such positions where the racial equity piece is not even applicable because they have, you know, these economic issues. Their housing situation is unstable. Their economic situation is unstable, you know. All of that, like when you go back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And I don't remember the levels, but you know, economic security, having a house over your head, having food on the table, that all of that is really a foundational thing. And none of the other things matter until you have those things addressed. And that's really, really, really important. And I mean, the fact that, you know, I don't want to minimize the need, the need for racial equity because it's important, right?
It's very important.
It's very important. However, the fact that we are in silos because of what color we are, I mean, it's
Crazy.
beyond my understanding of, I don't want to say this the wrong way because it matters a lot, but what color we are for something so really, when you think about it, I mean, it has nothing to do with people's character. It has nothing to do with people's values. It has nothing to do with anything other than the color, other than what we see. And to have all this stuff, all these silos and all these issues going on because of color.
But then, you know, color goes even deeper. Like, I agree with how you're saying that, and I don't want to say this the wrong way either. Like, I'm trying to figure out the way to have these conversations. I think color is a very big issue. It is a conversation that we must have. There are things that are happening to people because of the color of their skin, and we
Absolutely.
have to address it. But the way that we are moving in silos to try to address it,
Yeah.
I don't I don't think that that's going to work.
Right.
Um, I would argue that it has already proven that it will fail.
Yeah.
And for me, looking at it from that lens, as a Black woman, as an African American woman, you know, I'm being challenged in every sense because if you can't speak the racial equity language, if you can't speak like this or speak like that, like what you say doesn't have a lot of value. There are racial equity issues within our individual race communities, if I'm saying that right. It's almost, I can't even explain what it is, But if we're gonna have and ask people for equity, we have to have equity within our own little silos that we have too. And it's not equitable. It's not equitable. What has been going on in the Black and brown communities has been going on for generations. Generations. And it's systematic, it's political, it's nasty, it's dirty. It was never set up to really empower the people the way that
Right.
they need to be empowered. But then, you know, as I'm being true to myself and understanding, like all my life, once I left for college, I've been strategically introduced to Caucasians, 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 and I'm trying to, you know, wrap my head around what that is. Your ability, Jen, to see what is going on in special education, not just for your son, but for all children, your gifting to see what is happening to minority children, but its ultimate effect on all children is amazing. But what is also telling is the fact that no one wants to hear your voice unless you will bend the knee the way that they want you to bend the knee. That's what's more telling. That as a Caucasian woman, you don't get to speak up for the equity issues you see, and we know it's valid. You don't get to stand in truth because of the color of your skin. That's a very telling thing.
So you've said a lot there, and I there's a lot. Well, first of all, I appreciate your kind words. I appreciate that very, very much. And I'm not in this for kindness. I'm in this because for a lot of reasons. First of all, I know what it's like to have, I want to say this the right way because I don't want anybody to come away from this believing that I know what it's like to be. These are really hard topics to talk about, and forgive me if I'm being clumsy. But
I'll hold space for you, Jen. Like, we know that we are trying to figure out how to have this conversation. So
yeah.
they can't hold you to, you know, making a mistake. Go ahead.
So I'm in this because I know what it's like from my own experiences to be excluded. I don't know what it's like to be an African American person, but I know. So I stutter, and I used to stutter. I mean, I've stuttered my whole life. I started when I was 3, and I was very severe from the start. I used to stutter so badly that I couldn't say my name. I mean, it would take me 2 minutes to say my name, and I'm not kidding. I went through a lot of speech therapy. So stuttering is a neurological issue. People think people who stutter are like they thought that Joe Biden had, you know, Alzheimer's or whatever. They think people who stutter are anxious or emotionally unstable or whatever. That's not it. It's a neurological issue. I've had a lot of help from a lot of people. But with that said, though, when you go through life as a person who stutters, you can't say your name, you can't get a haircut because you can't talk about it, you can't order in a restaurant. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can't do. You can't, if you're in a store, you can't ask where, you know, the cans of peas are. If you're lost, you can't ask, you can't stop somebody on the street and ask, where do I find the nearest, you know, whatever. There are a lot of impediments that come to just living your life. So I know what it's like to be excluded. I know what it's like to not be heard. So I'm in this because I don't want, in these educational equity conversations, the big picture ones that have been going on with these big organizations that have been trying to make change, I'm seeing people be excluded. I'm seeing parents of kids with IEPs, with 504 plans, with learning issues, with unusual learning profiles being excluded from the conversation.
Can I say this and then finish? I also see other grassroots that have a differing opinion be excluded. If you do not fit into the mold of what people are trying to push, you will be excluded. I'm sorry
Mhm.
I cut you off.
No, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, um, there needs to be so I'm not saying that in these educational reform movements that everybody that these organizations are trying to serve has to be treated in the same way, right? You need to cater to the needs of certain people, otherwise their needs will not be met, right? So I was reading something by the National Council on Disability, and it was about the African American school to prison pipeline, right? And they
Mhm.
were saying that the laws related to special needs, the laws related to protecting kids with special needs need to be applied towards the African American school to prison pipeline, because these laws are not working as well for African American children. And so you need to, what the words they use were, I think, you need to heed matters of race and culture in applying these laws. And I totally believe in that, right? That's really important. However, it's not to the exclusion of everybody else. You know, um, educational equity, and there was a movement with SSD, right? A few weeks ago, there was a public statement made to one of the Board of Ed meetings at SSD. SSD has written a statement about equity, right? They hired a diversity, equity, and inclusion person, like a manager for this, and they've made a statement about their position about educational equity. And the public statement was that race was not mentioned, right? That and and I agree with the public statement, right? You need to mention race because you need to heed, as the National Council said, you need to heed matters of race and culture. Otherwise, those issues will not be met. However, it's a both and. It's not an either or. It's not race to the exclusion of everybody else. It's race and everybody else. If it were race to the exclusion of everybody else, then those people's needs would not be met, and you would be leaving those people out. And that's not equitable. We have issues in the educational system that are harming kids. These issues are harming children, and not all the children that these issues are harming are Black and brown kids.
Wow. I just had a question. Touch it if you want to, or say no, Carmen, I won't touch that. We have a election coming up April 6th. I know you don't know a lot about the city, but you do know that there are a lot of legacy people, like that just constantly be reelected. How do you think politics play into what's happening in our schools? And I know for me, and you probably see me post this all the time, like we need a shakening. You know, I love a lot of these people that are in office, like, but for me, they're all connected. All of this stuff is connected, and we need fresh blood. I'm talking about from the most basic office all the way up to Jefferson City to the highest office. What do you think about politics and how politics play into education? I don't know, if you see what I see, but all of these people are freaking friends. All of them. I mean, the major advocates and activists for education and equity and like doing the right thing, all of these people, all of them are friends. Most of the school board people that are up for election have been getting primed for you. All of these people. They control like 10 schools. What are we doing? My thoughts. What are your thoughts about politics in this?
So let me say first that I don't know a lot about the details of St. Louis City politics. So I'm not going, I'm not enlightened enough. I can't speak to particular people or particular positions or offices because I just don't know. With that said, though, so I think politics plays a big role in public education, huge role. I don't want to sound cynical, but I would say to follow the money. And I say that because so I'm not from Missouri, I'm not from St. Louis, I'm not from the Midwest. I am I'm just not from here. I'm originally from New York City. I was born in the Bronx. We lived in an apartment in the Bronx. We moved to New Jersey. Our apartment got robbed. I mean, we were in an unsafe place. So we moved where we could, and so I grew up in New Jersey. So I'm not from here. So I looked up the history of public education in Missouri because I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I didn't understand the division. I didn't understand St. Louis City versus the county. I didn't get it.
It's a mess.
It's a mess, right? So I looked it up, right? And from the start, white people, there are many white people out there who dismiss the idea of the possibility that there could be systemic racism in the laws, right? There are people who say, no, that's not true. I looked it up and I was, this shows how protected I've been as a white person for not having experienced this personally, because I was shocked. So from the start of public education in Missouri, it has been about who to spend the money on, who the taxpayers were willing to spend taxpayer money on educating. And maybe I brought this up, but I'll give an example. We may have talked about this in the past. In the 1800s, sometime, this was after the Civil War was over. There was a law that said that public money, that tax money would be spent on educating Black children in only those cities or those towns that had at least 20 Black children, right?
Wow. I want you to finish, but people that have a problem with the 1619 Project and CRT, critical race theory, like I'm here for that conversation. But when we're talking about education, these are things that need to be taught. There's no way of escaping what history did. We can debate, but these are the things. Come on, Jen, keep on.
So I agree with you. I mean, this is a fact. This was the law, that public money would only be sent to towns where you had at least 20 Black children for the money to be spent on public education, right? So if you had a town with 19 Black children, you got no state money. You know, those kids who lived there, they were out of luck, right? And so what happened was, and this comes through the information about this comes through historical analysis. So, and I didn't do the first person research, I just read somebody else's research. What happened was that either the towns lied about their census, right? So if they had 23 kids, let's say, they reduced it to 19. So they purposely, the leaders of these towns purposely withheld the tax money. Not only that, not only was there lying, but that number 20, that 20 minimum, that was chosen intentionally because the people in Jeff City making this law knew that the majority of the towns in Missouri had fewer than 20 Black children. So there was an intentional withholding of money, of tax money, from public education for Black kids.
I think, I want you to finish, we need to consider the intentionality of what's being done right now in the law, and not just in Jefferson City. I'm talking about within the Aldermanic Board with their power to move legislation, what they do and don't do. We need to be thinking about the intentionality of the Board of Elections for the school board. Like what, I mean, not the Board of Election, but the school board people, what is their intentionality? What is everyone's intentionality? These organizations that are talking about this conference, what is, I've been asking, what are the motives? Because that will tell you what they're doing. Because if your motives is really driven toward equity, unification, reconciliation, and all of these, you will all see a pivot and you'll see these kids begin to win, but that's not the intention. The intention, and from my perspective, is division by any means necessary. What else you got to say? Finish that.
So yeah, so I can't speak to specifics because I don't know, right? I'm perfectly willing to say that I'm perfectly willing to say when I don't know something.
Mhm.
But so reform won't work. Reform of improvement of public education won't work unless you center the caregiver, center the kids, you know, and you can't just focus on one thing, because when you focus, when you hyper focus like that, you're leaving kids out, and that's not right.
Wow.
And I do think that these laws and these lawmakers who are hyper focusing to the exclusion of other kids, I can't see how this is going to be successful. It's not a logical trajectory to lead to success when you're only heeding particular issues and not other ones.
Wow. You
Particular
said,
kids and not other kids.
that's a good thought. You said when you hyper focus,
Yeah.
that's a problem. I was just sitting
Right.
here thinking, like, the majority of politicians only support public schools. And then when we get to talking about, if I could just call out a party, Republicans, that some that do support all branches of school, they can't openly support options because it will mess with their political platforms. So you're saying that just really blew back, like really is taking me back. Like when you only have a support or say you support only certain things, you actually leave a whole group of people out that you have been elected to support.
Right.
I
Right.
need to really really, really think about that. So as politicians say they are only in favor of traditional schools, like, do you understand what you're saying to your constituents who go to private schools, who go
Right.
to option schools, who are homeschooled? Like, do you understand what you are saying to them? Because your focus is completely narrowed in only on that. I
Right.
didn't even really think about that. Is that equity? Is that equity? And for those who won't even say like how they feel about education. I mean, can't we be honest? Like, if we don't like charter schools because we feel like these white people are coming in here and bringing their money and it's dark money and this, like, we can be honest about everything that we think is going on and deal with it and hold them accountable. But to silo them out and not even support them because of politics, where's the equity in that?
I completely agree with you. I mean, elected officials may be elected by only some of the people. You know, you're elected because the majority of the voters voted for you, right? They're
It's the
they're
6% in Missouri that do go vote. Like, it's a very small percentage in the city of St. Louis that actually go vote. So you're not even being elected by the majority. You're being elected
right,
by your friends.
right, exactly. You are elected though to serve everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah, not just the people who voted for you. You are elected to serve everybody. And this matters so much in public education because we're talking about kids, right? Kids, the kids don't vote. The kids are not, the younger kids more than older ones. They have no voice in politics, right? They're at the mercy of what happens in the political system. They're at the mercy of what happens in the tax system. And they're our most precious, you know, they're our country's future. I mean, I don't want to sound like this is a cliche, right? But kids represent the trajectory of where this country is headed. And if we don't get this together, you know, we're going to have issues. I mean, bigger issues than we have now, I think.
Wow. Well, we hit a lot of different things, went a whole lot of different ways. But I think as we sum it up, I was thinking about our friend today and like what it's like
Yeah.
to be a mom, which I am, a single mom, which I am, special needs child, which I have, to have all of the issues of life coming at me, and you still want me to make sure that I'm controlling the behaviors that the child has, making
Right.
sure this is done, this is done, this is done, this is done, this is done. I can't keep a job. I can't do this. I can't do that. You telling me to find family support that does not exist
Right.
because the world we live in, we don't know how to support each other. We don't know how to center each other. We don't know how to be there for each other. We are pushing more and more to move into silos. We have no support from our schools. We have no support from, our neighborhood. We have none of that. None of it. And our politicians, they don't do nothing but politic.
Right.
And you further divide us.
Yep.
What are we doing? Why are we doing it? I am grateful, Jen, to be in community with you and to not have to navigate this alone. I am grateful that, like me, you're moving forward and digging and moving in obedience to what you're supposed to be doing as far as your writing and your researching. I'm hoping as we all move in collective power and our gifts and talents that when we all have the final presentation of the things that we have been working on, that it'll be beneficial to Missouri in our own communities, where it'll be a catalyst for collective change, where everybody everybody has a chance. Is there anything you want to say before I stop this live?
I I just wanted to echo what you just said and express that I am exceedingly grateful as well to be in community with you two. This is lonely work, and it's important. And the last thing you said about pulling up for kids, for everybody's kids, everybody. That's what the mission needs to be.
All right. I don't know when Jen and I will be back. This was part 5. We'll see when we come back. She'll say something else that just like, wow. And we'll be back. Bye, Facebook.